You know, it's very interesting, Don, to be talking to you today because today being February 3rd, 2021, it is 62 years ago today, February 3rd, 1959, that the plane crash referred to by you in American Pie as the day the music died took the lives of Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, the Big Bopper, and also the pilot, for that matter, Roger Peterson. So very ironic that we're having this conversation today.
Well, I like the fact that people are mentioning the pilot for many, many years. He was never mentioned, and he lost his life. He lost everything. So, the day, February 3rd is a day that is now permanently associated with my song American Pie, and I couldn't be happier about it. Its importance it seems to be growing through the years.
You've done, and this is something I want to touch on with you. You've done a new version of American Pie with the a cappella country group called Home Free. And they're huge. They are a huge group. They have, like 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube. They are urging people to donate to Save Our Stages, National Independent Venue Association, which there's a little bit of irony here because according to my research, the first time American Pie was played, it was played right here in New York City on WNEW and WPLJ to mark the closing of the Fillmore East. Now, as you know, because you're from the New York area, you're from New York, we have a lot of clubs here in New York. Yes, we want to see them all stay open. But if some of them close, we'll still have clubs. But if you take a place that I believe you're familiar with, because I know you've played there, Tupelo Music Hall in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing else around for miles.
Right.
So if that club closes, there goes the music scene. And, you play in all these places.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You have a stake in this as well because you tour relentlessly. I mean, you're on the road all the time.
Right.
So, I just wanted to get a little bit out of you about, Save Our Stages and NIVA, as they're called, National Independent Venue Association.
Well, that's a great topic to discuss and talk about. The longer this thing hangs on, the more we're going to lose, and they're not coming back. They're only going to come back when investors are sure that there's not going to be something else that's going to clear the hall. And crowds can gather, and we can invest in a joint like this, and have people come and drink and socialize. When a year later, some damn new thing is going to come around, and the club's going to be ruined. Everybody's going to lose their money.
Right.
So this thing has really messed people up because the normal way of existing has been changed.
Let's go back to American Pie. When you wrote that song, did you have any, granted, everybody knows that song. In fact, it's been, the Recording Industry Association of America has voted it in the top 5, the 5th biggest song of the century. And it's in very good company, Over the Rainbow, White Christmas, This Land Is Your Land, Respect, and American Pie. When you wrote this song, did you know you had a huge hit on your hands? Did you think it was going to be as big as it was?
No, I never had a hit, so I didn't know what one was. And I was in a very political time, and I'm not political. I don't like politicians. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I am simply an independent, radical thinker. I think whatever I want, and I say what I want. And so the song American Pie was exactly like that. It's amazing. I think about it. I don't know how I ever was so lucky to think of such a thing, but I did. And then I incorporated it into a song that people love and know and sing and know by heart.
And I believe you said kind of what you were just touching on is it was, you wrote it with just your view, as a person with your view on what was going on in the world.
That is absolutely correct, and that's how I do everything. I write my songs for me. If I write a song like Superman's Ghost about George Reeves, and I successfully record that, write that, I'm a success. Because I got that recorded and I got that out there. I don't care if it's number one or if nobody ever hears it.
Right.
If I make a good version of Love Letters, you know, with the guys in Nashville, a Kitty Lester song, and it's beautiful to me and I've added something to it, I've done my job. I'm happy. Now,
you've continued to record throughout the years.
You know, if you count studio albums and best ofs and live albums, there's probably 40 albums out there.
You have major success with American Pie, the kind of success that is next to impossible to top, okay? You know, yes, you had, you know, Starry, Starry Nights, and it was another hit song, but, you know, it's kind of like from American Pie, where do you go? And when did that dawn on you after the song became a big hit? Like, okay, what am I going to do now? You know, how do I top this? Was there any, because a lot of people, when they get, you know, that big and you were huge, I mean, to this day, you're a household name. I mean, in the last couple of days, I've mentioned your name to people of all ages, and they clearly know who you are. And it is because of American Pie. Was there any, and I'm going to phrase this the best way I can, was there any sort of like depression afterwards? Like, well, geez, now what am I going to do? You know, how I don't have hits as big as this anymore?
I don't need show business. I don't need any of this.
Well, you know, if I may just interject there, and you make no bones about this because I've read about it. I know you don't need it, which I had learned a long time ago, but I read in more detail. You were very, very smart with your money.
Oh, yeah.
And you've invested, and, you know, reports are that you're worth $150 million. And I only bring this up because it is out there in the press. So I remember hearing about that years ago and saying, you know, good for him, because he doesn't have to go play, and he still goes and plays. So, but was that your attitude back then, like after Starry, Starry Night, when...
Well, let me explain something. I put out a third album called Don McLean.
Right.
Which had a song called Dreidel on it. And that was the story of what instant fame was doing to me. And the whole album really revolved around that song as the central piece of the record.
And
that succeeded in making me famous, but somewhat less famous.
Right.
And what I did was I found this place where I filled auditoriums and did world tours and did shows with all sorts of songs and released albums. And my best ofs were number one all over the world. I've had a huge success overseas. Every album I ever made was platinum in Australia and New Zealand and in the Asian countries. And then many in the same kind of success in England and less success here in the United States. But I didn't know about any of this. I didn't plan any of it. All I did was tour the world, and I was always hot somewhere. So that was fun. And I got to learn all about the world and sing all over the world. And then I would come back and something would happen and I'd be hot for a year in the United States. So that was how it went. And that suited me perfectly.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't required to fill stadiums like Springsteen or these people. That's a very large weight to have on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I admire anybody that wants to shoulder that and enjoys doing that, but I didn't. I wanted to be able to take my horse up in the woods, and I wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do, or nothing if I felt like it. And so I've had my foot half in and half out of show business, but I've done a lot of work at the same time. I'm very happy. I have everything you could ever want from this career, all sorts of things. I couldn't even go into all the amazing things that have happened to me in my life, and I really thought that I'd be finished a year later. I figured that's it for me. You know, I'm going to be up, down, out, and it didn't happen that way. It kept on. I kept getting jobs, kept filling halls. People wanted to hear me sing. You see, they wanted to hear me sing. And that's the thing people overlook. I fill concert halls because I'm a singer that people want to hear sing. And they happen to like the material. Some of it they don't like that much, I'm sure. Because there's a lot of very different things.
Sure.
But they want to hear my voice.
And speaking of your voice, it still sounds phenomenal.
I take care of myself.
I can tell because I listened to the new version again that you did with Home Free, and I said, oh my God, his voice sounds as good as it did in 1971. So,
well, I make sure I sing the songs in the same keys. And I do a lot of work with breath control, and I work a lot, but not too much, not to the point where you damage your voice. There are a lot of cats in the music business who work way too much, and they can hardly talk.
One thing that I know you haven't done, but you've been talking about or working on, and I know I would love to see this, is American Pie the musical.
Well, that's in the hands of some other people who are very professional now. And this year we'll start to work on the book. Next year we'll start to do more work on it. Probably the year after that, there'll be some kind of an actual show that will be put on somewhere to begin to do this.
Another thing I want to ask you about, just as a sidebar, is you sold your handwritten lyrics to American Pie. It's a story that keeps popping up in my research for $1.2 million. Why? Why did you sell them?
Seemed like a good idea.
I mean, again, you're not a man that needs the money, so I don't imagine it was for the money.
Well, I'm going to liquidate a lot of things that I own. That's another thing that's in the works, is a massive auction at Julian's Auction House. Which is going to have a large catalog auction. And I want to get rid of a lot of my guitars, banjos, stage clothes, boots, saddles, Western gear, guns, knives, watches.
Why?
All kinds of things. Because I want to make sure that I did that. I don't know if something happens to me, what will become of all that stuff. My children are not interested in being caretakers. I am the only person I will give certain things to people and then sell it, and that's the end of that, and start a new phase of life rather than holding on to all this stuff.
Is part of that also too? It's just like, I got too much stuff. I don't need it. I feel a little bit overwhelmed by having all this stuff.
No, I'm not overwhelmed. Everything is under control. I just want to make sure that I do what needs to be done with it, rather than have something happen to me and suddenly nobody knows what to do. Because all my life, since I was 15 years old, my dad passed away, I've been in charge. And I know what to do, and now's time for me to do this. So I'm doing it.
Well, your answer comes as no surprise, because, I read too that you don't have an assistant. You don't have a lot of people around you. You never did. You like to make your decisions and be in control and do things yourself, which attributes to why you're still around, why you've amassed the money. And I don't mean to keep bringing up the money, but
no, talk about the money.
Okay, good. A lot of people
I don't mind.
Well, a lot of people don't, but I read an article in Market Watch and I said, okay, he was very open about it. And, that's what I took away from the article, that, he was wise enough to not have this big circle of people that he trusted in. He was smart to be like, no, I am going to be hands-on in all this.
I'll tell you something about that. I am a naturally analytic person, but I actually studied a lot of philosophy in college. And I will analyze what someone is saying to me in a way that they may not realize I'm doing. And I would immediately pick up bullshit. And I'll tell you another quick story. I had a promoter overseas, and I had a very corrupt manager. But I stayed with him because we came there together, and I am loyal. But I should have gotten rid of him years before I did. But I was in England, and the tour money came in, and I forget how much it was. It was in the 70s. It was maybe a couple of $100,000, which is a lot of money in those days. And they said, well, you know, you can keep the money in the Isle of Man, and you won't have to pay taxes. And I said, no, I can't keep it in the Isle of Man because the law is that you pay taxes on anything you earn from whatever source. So I took the money, paid the taxes, and slept well at night. Well, 10, 15 years later, I had to get rid of that manager because he had allowed a lawyer friend of his to bilk me out of a small fortune. And I write about it in my Wikipedia site. You can read it. You can see his name and what he did.
I did read it, yes.
And so if I had had that money in the Isle of Man, he would have said to me, listen here, Donnie boy, I don't think you really want to do this unless you want the government to know that you've been a tax cheat.
Now
and
you say...
he'd still be my manager today.
Now, you say you wanted to get rid of him 10, 15 years earlier, and from what I remember in your Wikipedia, he was your manager for like 18 years, though, right?
Correct. So you see, but he would have been my manager right now if I had money over in the Isle of Man. Okay, he'd be collecting money and making me, you know, and making me aware of the fact that he had this over me. So my point is that you don't do things like that.
Yeah.
You know, you keep things very clean and very, very legal and very honest, and you won't have any trouble.
Well, you know, I like your take on things. This is why you're successful. This is why you're happy. You're very straightforward. You speak your mind. I like that a lot. I agree with everything that you're saying, quite honestly. Don McLean, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.